Hello there, my name is Pavel Shtermach, and now we'll unveil the top news of recent days. A former deputy defense minister has been detained in Russia on charges of corruption, the Washington Post informs with reference to Russian special services. Former deputy defense minister of the Russian Federation Dmitry Bulgakov has been detained in Moscow and will be held in custody pending investigation and trial. It is known that the charges relate to corruption, and the arrest became next in a series of high-profile detentions of Russian military officials.
The culture of corruption is, as has long been, present throughout the senior ranks of the Russian military. During my time in Europe, we were never surprised when a general was arrested and sent to the Gulag. Even once, my counterpart. He's the sin. It flows from their political masters. Mark Hertlin, former commanding general of United States Army Europe, on social network X.
Bulgakov was the Deputy Minister of Defense from 2008 to 2022 and was responsible for the logistical and technical support of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, managed measures to provide the troops with weapons, military equipment, etc. The Guardian writes that purges among Moscow's top military leadership are ongoing in Russia. Corruption scandals are not news. Officials and high-ranking officials have been accused of profiting from their positions for decades, AR reminds. And the war in Ukraine led to a sharp increase in defense spending, which increases opportunities for bribery. In May of this year, former Deputy Minister of Defense Timur Ivanov was also arrested in Russia. He oversaw major military construction projects, including construction in the occupied Ukrainian city of Mariupol, destroyed by Russian bombing and temporarily occupied by Russians themselves. Some experts also know that corruption among the military is to some extent beneficial to Russian leadership. Thus, an authoritarian state having classified information on key officials can choose whom to persecute, he added. Let me remind you that the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant against former Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and the Chief of the General Staff of the Russian Federation, Valery Gerasimov. They are accused of committing war crimes and crimes against humanity in the form of causing excessive accidental harm to civilians or damage to civilian objects. Over the next 2 years, Estonia plans to increase defense spending to 4% of gross domestic product, one of the highest rates among NATO members. The country is looking to buy ammunition and strengthen national security after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Estonia announced its new goal after a meeting between Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur and his American counterpart Lloyd Austin in Washington, writes Bloomberg. All allies should increase their spending to 2.5 or 3% of GDP, Pevkur said. The Baltic states and Poland have led the way in increasing defense spending since Putin's invasion of Ukraine, as they share borders with Russia or its ally Belarus. According to NATO estimates, this year Estonia will become the second country of the alliance to spend 3.4% of GDP on defense after Poland with 4%, and ahead of the United States. Pevkur also called for a greater U.S. presence in Estonia and an increase in the potential of long-range weapons. American HIMARS missile systems and infantry units are currently located in the Baltic country. Earlier, British Defense Minister John Gilley said that NATO members should exceed the alliance's target of 2% of GDP for military spending. In 2014, NATO members agreed on a defense spending of 2% of GDP. However, this year only 23 of the 32 alliance countries will reach this level. The US should rightly expect that European countries will take on part of the burden, but also the responsibility for leadership, Gilley noted. At the same time, the Inspector General of the German Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Carsten Bühr, says increasing danger in Russia's military buildup. According to him, it is currently clear that the Russian army is oriented towards the West. In 5 to 8 years, Moscow's armed forces will be equipped with the material base and personnel to launch an attack on NATO, Bühr said. He added that this assessment was based on his own analysis, information from intelligence services and allied armed forces, as well as Putin's statements. Earlier, the head of the armed forces of Norway, General Erik Kristoffersen, expressed his belief that the window of opportunity of the North Atlantic Alliance to prepare for a possible confrontation with Russia has decreased to 2 or 3 years. In addition, according to Polish President Andrzej Duda, Russia may soon have such a military potential that it will be able to attack NATO already in 2026. Today is the anniversary of a terrible tragedy, a terrorist attack and brutal murder of Ukrainian defenders of occupied Mariupol in Olenivka by Moscovites. On the night of July 28 and 29, 2022, the occupiers carried out a terrorist attack. An explosion ran out in a place where the defenders of Mariupol were kept. The day before, the enemy cynically collected the prisoners in a new location, lied about moving to other places, and then just blew up those people when they were expecting it the least, at night. What is this if not a planned terrorist act, an act of repression? This explosion took the lives of more than 50 people to different estimates and injured more than 100 who were defending their homes, families and their homeland. Many of our defenders are still in cruel captivity where Muscovites use torture, starve, humiliate and torture to death. Many defenders of Mariupol have still not been exchanged, although they have received guarantees from many parties, including international humanitarian organizations. While they are in captivity, a new Olenivka takes place every day. The report debunked the lies of the Russians about the alleged HIMARS missile attack on the penal colony in Olenivka. All Russian crime goes with a lie within it by default. Our world partners stand in solidarity with Ukraine in terms of Russian propaganda, and those responsible for the murder of Ukrainian prisoners of war will be brought to justice in strict accordance with international law. All the clumsy attempts of the Kremlin to shift the responsibility for the murder towards Ukrainian Western weapons is not just cynical and ill, as always is. It is the case for Russia. This time it is even somewhat pitiful for the Kremlin being so helplessly lying. This is one of the largest Russian war crimes committed during the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. As the myth about Olenivka were debunked, the lies about Bucha, Irpin, and then about the 10 years of bombing Donbass, the protection of Russian people, will also be debunked. War against Ukraine is not the protection of Russians or Russian-speaking population. This is the genocide of Ukrainians. Russians repeatedly commit crimes against prisoners. Moreover, Russia deliberately blocks new exchanges of prisoners. Thus, the Kremlin is trying to provoke Ukrainians tired of waiting for the return of their relatives from Russian captivity to protest. Ukraine will gladly get rid of thousands of captured Russian invaders because their number requires building more and more detention facilities. In exchange, of course. However, Moscow is not hurry to take them back. Exchange negotiations are always difficult and non-public because excessive hype can eliminate all efforts in this delicate matter. Work on the release of prisoners from captivity continues uninterruptedly. And that concludes our today's video. Thank you for watching. Stay updated, comment, like and subscribe to our UATV English channel for more news from Ukraine. It is your support that really matters for us. Remember that. Goodbye.